Hello, folks. We're glad to be with you. Just had some technical difficulty there.
Those fascists are out to get us.
But we're back. It's really great, and we're really thankful for so many of you being on the chat there. Rob, why don't you kick off the show properly?
Well, just let us know, because of technical difficulties, please let us know in the comments if things are going well, right, badly, whatever else, sound, images, just let us know, because poor old John has been working really hard. I stayed out of the way.
Rob opened doors at key times, though, which was very helpful.
I jumped in and helped wherever I could.
We had our two different monitors both died, and I had to drag one from the top of the house back down to the basement. It's
huge. It's like 50 inches across. So, yes.
But here we are. We're good. We're good.
And we're on. Hello, folks, and welcome to Totally Tank, the tankiest podcast in Tankville. I'm Rob.
And I am John, and this is episode 78, recording and streaming live on 31 January 2026. It's 40 degrees Celsius. Again, outside. It's been 7 days of this stuff, which is 104 in American.
In freedom units.
Yes. The dew point is something like 8 degrees, so we're not worried about the dew forming inside the camera, at least, because the camera has its own cooling system. And today we're talking about the Soviet swamp fighters, the little self-propelled guns that made light tanks obsolete in the Red Army, the SU-76. And before we want to get any further, we just want to let our American fans know that before they bomb us or kidnap us, look, we surrender. We've got our white flags. And please don't attack us, and actually, please don't attack anyone else. Yes, your gentleman parts are so large as to stretch beyond our comprehension, and anything that we have which you would like, just let us know and we'll send it on over.
Yeah, I think we've already signed the deal for the rare earth minerals that we've got here in Australia, so they're already yours, so you don't have to take them by force.
Rare earths aren't rare, they've got plenty. They don't need that. Oh, Rob, while we're going, do you just want to close that door that we had open? Sorry, folks, we're getting a little... yes, it's been a morning or an afternoon. Incidentally, these jaunty white flags we're waving, the next 12 people to sign up to a paid tier on Patreon will pop one in the mail, personally signed by both of us. That's open to first-time subscribers only. So, if you're interested, have a very, very cheap little white flag so you too can surrender to the Americans before they do anything horrible to you. But if you're not lucky enough to get a signed white flag, then don't despair. You can get the rest of our Totally Tank merchandise, T-shirts, mugs, hats,
Tanks,
mini skirts. Yeah, mini skirts. Don't forget the mini skirts from redbubble.com. Just make sure to look for Totally Tanked. Now on to our tank.
But it's not a tank. Name, the Samovkovna, Ustanovka.
Just quickly, 76. Rob, let's before you get further in, let's talk to our audience who are here. There's 14 of you guys. So Raghouse says we've got an option to poll for an open-topped icebox. There is a poll. Yes. We will get to the poll shortly. Raghouse joins us from Melbourne. Hans Vormhat is loving these starts from the East Coast USA. Perfect timing after participating in sport of my drinking team with a bowling problem. Cat Chance joined us from Montana. Thomas Schossen says hello from Champaign, Illinois. We'll be his companions as he build models tonight. It's excellent. Cat Chant is also building models. Why don't you let us know in the chat what you're building, guys? Jonas says the best tank podcast, and it's a perfect way to finish the last hour of work. Okay. Tasman's joining from Sydney. Kilo 1947 has joined us. Haydenator 21's watching from Muncie, Indiana. Jonas Bond is watching from the west coast of the USA. Right, Cat Chant and Thomas are talking about what they're doing. Totally Tanked is having Panther issues right now. Monitor issues, but yeah, it may as well have been.
Well, remember the Panther episode was about the other technical issue.
Yeah, I think from here we're okay.
So like the SU-76, we started bad but came good, just like us, like this episode. Right,
Thomas is building a M60A1. Okay. Ragho's watching the video from the Armour Museum this morning where they flipped their Sherman upside down. It was a bit shocking to watch. That's the Australian Armour Museum. I think that happened at...
Parramatta.
No, this is the Sherman upside down.
Oh, okay. And Warwick's here.
Oh, hey, was. Good on you, mate. All right. Tasman's suspecting there was beer spillage on the equipment. There was not.
No. Of all the running around that John was doing, one of the things I made sure is I held the beer tube steady and made sure... I maintain the important parts of the podcast is looking after the beer tube.
Yeah, Rako says John looks flushed. Yeah, it's 40 degrees and I'm running up and down stairs with monitors under my arm.
And stressing about trying to get it all working when it should be working. It was working last weekend.
Tasman's making accusations that we've drunk 4 schooners of beer.
Like 2.
Yep. MAGA Mall, which I think is Alan is wanting to know what's a white flag do. Well, nothing with you guys. But anyway.
A white flag means we'd like to talk. It's not a sign of surrender. It means we'd like to talk.
Generally with a view to surrendering, mind you. But anyway. Tasman's saying it, but in a recent exercise in Norway, Norwegian troops got some Americans to surrender because they lacked Arctic gear. Kilo's saying he's not familiar with this vehicle. The fact none of us were particularly familiar with it, and we're going to get to why we all should have been, is being worthwhile, mate. So good work there. And Woz has joined us in Brisbane. Hello, Woz. Okay, Rob, start talking about the tank.
Right. So, look, you did my foreign pronunciations. What's that word?
Samakodnya.
Ustanovka?
Yeah, Ustanovka.
76 or SU-76, nicknamed the bitch, Suka in Russian, or Goloshipi Ferdinand.
Beras Ferdinand, Nicholas Ferdinand.
After its profile similarity to the German Ferdinand, but these last two could be recent names made up by the internet. I didn't see any of the old ones first. Anyway.
The first time I saw it was when I asked an AI to write a song about it. So, yeah.
But, yeah. One famous SU-76 was named Colombina by her crew after a female Renaissance Italian commedia dell'arte personage.
So that's basically Italian stage comedies of the Renaissance.
Yeah. The SU-76 had massive... the SU-12 was the initial SU-76 that had massive issues. And then we went to the SU-15, which had the 6 road wheels, which then became the SU-76M, which then went into mass production as it was more stable, higher gun elevation, slightly faster, and with a larger fighting compartment than the competing SU-16 with the 5 road wheels, which was not selected. But just remember that SU means self-propelled gun, and 76 is the barrel width. So, as we saw in the M10 Wolverine episode, the Soviets did not always differentiate whether the vehicle was an M10, a Colombina, or an SU-76I, which was made from Panzer III or Stug hulls with a F-34 76mm Soviet gun installed in a front-mounted casemate.
Sorry, Robert, I just want to jump in before the rivet counters get on us in the comments later. Colombina was just one particular tank. It wasn't a class name. But
as I'm saying, it was just a... When everything's called a SU-76, I thought, right, I better call out the actual one was called a Colombina and just be able to say, yeah, it's that one.
Now, in the poll, we've got 10 votes in already. 80% say it was a very useful and dangerous vehicle, and 20% say it was a death trap.
Dangerous vehicle can roll both ways.
Who's it dangerous for?
Roll both ways.
It was despised by its crew, but it was loved by the infantry it served with. Is a very interesting observation to make about it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So anyway, SU-76 can be any sort of vehicle, self-propelled gun mounted with a 76 millimeter gun.
The German pedants on YouTube have been saying, anyone calling this vehicle we're talking about the SU-76 is wrong because it was an SU-76M, but they built 10,000 of them and they called it SU-76, and the Russian sources at the time just referred to it as SU-76. So I think that's a piece of pedantry that's post hoc. But anyway.
So I'll throw in the M or the I's or everything else when it's required to be differentiated between the various versions. Otherwise, we'll just call it the SU-76. Now, and another big shout out to Peter Samsonoff and the Tank Archives, who we'll be talking to later on in the episode about his new book.
It's a pre-record, but yes, Peter will be on.
Hetzer versus the SU-76M, Hungary 1945. We're only touching on a bit of the detail that he has there. Right? If you really want to get into the life of the SU-76, go have a read of his site. There are 24 articles at least.
Plus his book.
Plus his book, all about it. So, have a read. It's just,
but buy Peter's book. In fact, buy all of Peter's books if you want to. He takes things to tank nerd level that we don't particularly want to go to and couldn't go to. But if you want to go deeper, it's there. Peter's there.
So we'll just touch on some of that. But yeah, a lot of our information is derived from that. And thank you very much to Peter for providing all that. Right, stats. It's a type light self-propelled gun. Designed by S.A. Ginsberg, who we'll get onto later. Designed in 1942, produced from December 1942 through to October 1945. Number built 14,292, 560 of which were the SU-76, and 13,732 were the SU-76M, of which 8,500 were combat losses. So, yes, it was up there in the thick of fighting and it had a lot of losses.
It was a dangerous combination to be a crew of, in that it was an extreme problem for the enemy, but it was also quite easy to solve the problem by deleting them. So that's not a great position to be in.
No.
It's, yeah.
All right, mass, 10,000 kilos, so 10 tons. Length 4.97 meters
Sorry,
long.
just want to point out to the Americans, you see how easy that was? we just knocked off 3 zeros and that was the number of tons. Yeah.
Width, 2.7 meters wide. Height, 2.10 meters high. Crew, 4. Commander, driver, gunner, loader. Nice and simple. Armour. The front armour was 25 to 35 millimeters thick. Not very much. Could basically withstand a small arms to 50 cal style.
You might have a chance against the 20 millimeter cannon, but you wouldn't be too confident.
No, the side armour was only 10 to 15 millimeters. And guess what?
Just want to quickly note for people on the video, a lot of the footage and the shots of the SU-76 are from the Australian Museum of Artillery and Armour at Osama Fest. That was it was good. Rob told me I wasn't allowed to have a beer until I took some photos in the museum. So there we go. We got it all.
Just wait for our episode on the German half track, where there are like 15 of them, and I made him go around and take photos of all.
Yeah, and I've got no idea which is which. But actually, I've got the plaques. I can figure it out.
We've got the plaques. We've got all the information there. But anyway, that'll come one day. All right, main armament, the 76 millimeter Zeiss 3.
Oh, Zeiss.
Oh, I'm calling it Zeiss.
I call it Zeiss myself.
Zeiss.
Yeah.
I'm Australian, mate. Z. Zeiss. 1942 divisional field gun. Secondary armour from April 1945 was the 7.62 DT machine gun. However, that was not deployed during the Great Patriotic War. So, yes.
But it did. They did, in the later run, put a anti-air mount onto the roof framing.
Yes, from April.
Yeah.
When did the war in Europe finish?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they did fight the Japanese with it. So.
Yeah. And it frequently had tank riders who would be armed with small arms as well. But yeah.
Yes. But the point being is that it did not have its own machine gun. Engine, the Gaz 203, which was 2 of the Gaz 202 6-cylinder petrol engines, each producing 70 horsepower. So
it's an interesting nomenclature to take the Gaz 202 and double it and not call it 202 X2 or whatever, but to call it the 203.
There was also the Gaz 204, but that was totally different as well. So Gaz being the factory that was coming out of. Yep. Torsion bar suspension, fuel capacity 412 litres, operational range 250 kilometres on road, or cross country 175 kilometres, maximum speed of 45 kilometres an hour.
Now, Alan has asked, did any World War II tank have a heater? Well, the Shermans had heated crew suits with where they plugged the electrics of their crew suits into the tank. So you would say they had heating, and the M3 medium definitely had a auxiliary heater as well. But the rest of them, no, it was pretty miserable, particularly if you had a
just let the engine heat the interior.
Well,
of the tank.
yeah, but it depends. When you had things like the American air-cooled engines, the Wasp and so on, they sucked an enormous amount of air in and basically refrigerated the tank. But yeah,
there you go.
Cool. All right, Rob.
All right. The initial design and development. By 1942, both the Soviets and the Nazis decided there was no point building any more light tanks as they were ineffective on the battlefield. But as the design, parts, training, labour and factories of the light tanks was mostly intact or moved to the Urals, there was a point to keep the work already done and build something more useful out of them. The Soviets, for the Soviets, this was taking the T-70 light tank and creating a light self-propelled gun. Other light tanks were looked at the same time and before, but they were not found to be up to the requirements. The Soviets were already experimenting with light self-propelled guns by taking captured Panzer IIIs and mounting their own guns on them as the initial SU-76I, the same as the Nazis were doing with their Martyrs, installing rechambered Soviet early war F-22 76mm guns on German hulls. So they could fire the German 75mm shells through the 76mm barrel. Yeah. When developing a light SPG, they kept trying to put the 45mm gun which was common for the light tanks and support tanks at that time, and then a 57mm anti-tank gun, which could penetrate the front of a Tiger. But the versatility of the 76mm gun and its ability to support infantry and provide decent indirect high explosive fire made the difference.
So they did put the work into it, and it came with an artillery sight, which made it problematic for shooting moving targets. But it had the elevation to punk its shells out 13 kilometres, which is it's 7 miles or something. But it's a long-ish distance as a light artillery piece. But then it was also to rumble along directly with the infantry and poke big holes in anything that was causing a problem.
Yeah. So the 76mm gun couldn't take out a Tiger, but could, whereas the 57mm could. But let's take a quick step back to what things were like in the pre-war days for a Soviet tank designer and what it has to do with the Su-76. So the lead designer of the Su-76 was Semyon Alexandrovich Ginsburg. He was one of the first new guard of the Soviet tank designers, starting in his role in 1929. He made his way up through the ranks of tank designers through the 30s as a deputy to Joseph Kotin, himself a deputy to the People's Commissar of the Tank Industries. Just remember, Russia was all about building industrialization, and part of that... Five-year plans, and part of that was all built basically on building tanks. Building tanks was tanks and tractors being the same thing, essentially, was a big part of the Soviets' industrialization. However, when Stalin began his purges of the military in 1937, it became a time of terror for the Soviet tank designers. Being in charge of large factories and resources of the state, there was ample chance for corruption. Due to their expertise, execution was seen as too harsh a punishment for many cases of questionable spending and corruption. Lead engineers were chiefly the ones punished, but Ginsburg was also rounded up by the secret police in November 1937 and remained under investigation until April 1938.
Now, because almost no one watching this has lived in these kind of febrile environments, the thing you've got to remember is if someone slept with your wife or you just find them really annoying at work, you could make a false accusation against them and they'd be disappeared, and who knows what the investigators would find when they started poking through their underwear drawers.
And suddenly you'd have an opportunity for promotion.
And suddenly you get a promotion, although it is a high-risk game, because if the investigators come back and say this guy's squeaky clean, then you making the allegation is going to cause you some trouble. But there was a lot of... it was prone to abuse, let's say.
The investigation to Ginsburg turned up nothing criminal. Repressions and investigations of 1937 to 1939 led to a high turnover of tank factories. I
mean, remember Konstantin Chelpan, who made the V2 engine, was purged and executed, and then a few years later they had to say, "Oops, that was a mistake." Sorry to the family.
He did a really good job, but his rivals got the better of us. The position of chief designer changed often. However, Ginsburg continued in his role as lead tank designer with various ranks until the design of the SU-12 came to him in 1942. So the SU-12 was the experimental, the prototype of the Su-76. The initial design had twin gas truck engines installed in the chassis, but with one engine driving the tracks on each side of the tank. The idea was that the left engine drove the left tracks and the right engine drove the right tracks.
Which, as David Fletcher at the Tank Museum said in his video on the Su-76, every country tries this. Wouldn't it be simpler if we just put one engine on one side and one engine on the other? It never works. They never deliver the power output correctly. And if one of them turns off for whatever reason, the whole tank starts spinning around. So everyone tries it and then realizes why no one does it once they've tried it.
Raga is saying there's a hiccup in the stream at his end. If anybody else getting that issue, please let us know in the comments.
We look like we're fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just hopefully it's just Raga. All right. But we're just being a little bit gun-shy at the moment. Those fascists might be coming for us. All right. Sorry. The right engine drove the right tracks, the left engine drove the left tracks, and there was linkage between the two that kept them synchronized. What could be simpler? And so the first Su-76s went out for trials in late December 42 with every expectation they would work perfectly, and ended up building 560 of them. Except 4 out of 5 of them vehicles broke down. In January 1943, 2 regiments of 21 vehicles each were sent to the front to help break the siege of Leningrad. Then in March Another 2 regiments were formed and sent forward to the front, but the gearbox broke, the main shaft broke, the synchronization broke, unlinking the tracks, or the transmission of one engine would break, so only one track could work. But Ginsberg insisted that the reason was the poor quality of the production and not his design. And because of his reputation and position, he was able to place the blame elsewhere. The Molotov Gaz factory, which is the name of the factory, disagreed with him and tried to show what the problem was and even started making their own fixes. Eventually, Stalin stepped in April 1943 and removed all Su-76s from the artillery regiments, recalling them for modernization. The following orders were issued. The State Committee of Defense decrees that production of the Su-76 SPGs at Factory 38 must cease immediately. The People's Commissar of Tank Production, Comrade Zaltzman, must be made aware of his mistakes regarding the production of the Su-76 SPGs at Factory 38. The designer of the Su-76 SPG, Comrade Ginsberg, must be removed from work at the NKTP and not allowed to participate in further tank projects. He is to be transferred to the NKO for assignment to less critical work in the acting army. That's the important part, the acting army. The chief of GAL KA, Comrade Vakovlev, must increase the amount of control and responsibility for all experimental work on armoured vehicles, paying special attention to members of trial commissions. The NKPT, Comrade Zaltzman, and the GAU KA, Comrade Yakovlev must find and punish guilty workers in the NKTP and GAUKA, which carelessly performed trials on the Su-76 SPG. The NKTP, Comrade Zaltzman, and Factory 38, Comrade Yakovlev, must produce spare parts for the Su-76 SPG and T-70 tank according to Attachment 1. Install by July 15th, 1943, all Su-76 SPGs in the armed forces, flexible couplings, additional friction clutches, reinforced idler carriers, and improved track spring stops. In order to complete these tasks, send Factory 38 brigades into the field. The NKO, Comrade Fedorenko, must by June 30th, 1943, present the People's Commissar of Defense with his plan regarding continued use of Su-76 SPGs produced prior to June 1st, 1943 by Factory 38. The commander of the Armoured Vehicle and Tank Forces of the Red Army, Comrade Fedorenko, along with the GAUKA, Comrade Yakovlev, must complete trials of the new SPG 76mm produced by Factory 38. During trials, pay special attention to the reliability of main assemblies. After the completion of the trials, the NKPT and NKO must provide the GOKO with the conclusion of the possibility of accepting new 76mm SPGs into service in the Red Army by July 5th. Chairman of the State Committee of Defense, I. Stalin.
So, yeah.
Stalin sent Ginsberg to the active army where in... Oh, this monitor's just turned off, John.
Yeah, it's okay. Keep going.
It's okay? Mm-hmm. Right. Stalin sent Ginsberg to the active army where... I mean, they didn't give him a rifle and tell him to, as Peter will tell us later on, they didn't give him a rifle and tell him to charge the machine guns. But so he was an engineer colonel.
It was a brigade level technical advisor. The fact that brigade level technical advisors were getting killed in the fighting suggests they were having some bad days at the office. But generally headquarters isn't meant to be in hand-to-hand combat. But
but when Comrade Stalin calls you out specifically for your bad conduct and bad designs, then it's probably a bad day at the office for you. I think, I don't like to say to be fair to Stalin, but to be fair to Stalin, Ginsberg had been caught out in close to a criminal level of blame shifting for things that were actually his fault, which was leading to substandard equipment being sent to the troops. So I have a lot of sympathy for Stalin's position here, frankly. Yeah. Anyway, Ginsberg arrived at Kursk just after the battle, but died 2 weeks later on 3rd of August 1943 when the 32nd Tank Brigade began an offensive in the Prokhorovka region.
Yeah.
Yep. And Peter will talk with more authoritatively about him in the second and the halftime interview. All right. However, the main improvements made for the Su-76
yes.
were to place both gas engines on the left side of the tank, beside the driver, and have the power going through one transmission. So there was no issue of synchronization, and if one engine failed, then the vehicle would simply limp along on the one engine.
But it's still, the engines are putting combined power to both tracks.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Just a couple of comments I want to tackle here. Hans has noticed that some of those welds look like some serious vodka was consumed during the process. However, some of the best welders I know are lushers. And welding armor plate is particularly problematic because your penetration becomes a huge issue. Okay, Jonas has noted, would that be a case of incompetence with Ginsburg? I don't think it was incompetence. I think it was...
arrogance.
Arrogance, yeah.
Well, sorry, what Peter tells us later on is pretty much arrogance.
But also ass covering. I mean, every IT department of the world does the same thing. You tell them you've got a problem, they say, oh, it's someone else's. Anyway, moving on from that. Raghaus also saying, I remember there was another designer who got arrested and sent to the front when Stalin found out he sent him back to the...
There was, being
this might be Ginsburg.
I did read something about Stalin found out that Ginsburg had been sent to the front and said, oh, hang on, better get him back. But having ordered it himself, I don't think that was the case. I think it was, it might have been, we need more, he's spent his time there and maybe get him back or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I did read that there was, one of my initial readings was that, Stalin was actually asking for him back, but he was dead by that stage. So... But from the way it was written, I wasn't sure about it. Anyway, so the two engines on the one side, and because they were truck engines, they were simple and rugged enough. Then they just kept on going.
Yeah, someone in the comments did ask about the whether they threw tracks a lot. I've not seen any description of them throwing tracks a lot. So even though it is a slack track design, that doesn't seem to have been a problem. It was really noted for its reliability, and it was really noted in particular for its ground pressure being low enough it could get over snow and it could get through swamps that the Germans didn't think any armoured vehicles could get through, which was where it...
Great on snow, but it was good enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't a T-34.
No.
Is the point being. Yeah. But what was actually required of the vehicle? They wanted a practical rate of fire of 12 rounds per minute, gun elevation of 15 degrees, and gun depression of -5.
Which is a lot better than modern Russian tanks.
Yep.
But,
30 degrees left and right traverse, which is 15 either way. Maximum 4 kilo effort on the flywheel to turn the gun. So, as we talked about, I can't remember which episode it was, but if your tank is on a slope and you're trying to traverse the turret...
It's the Wolverine.
There you go. And you're trying to traverse the turret and it's just too heavy to traverse everything because of the weight of the turret and the gun. You want to be able to make sure you can still turn even if you want it sideways on the slope. The gun position must allow for comfortable loading from all positions of the gun. Take that, Hetzer. Gun to be able to...
And look, the open top was... lots and lots of criticism, particularly, in snow, and they generally had some sort of covering to keep rain out, but it was cold and mortars would kill you, any sort of fighter bomber attack would kill you, but being open top did get help for serviceability of the gun, and also communication with infantry and general pleasantness when you're firing rapidly, because the fume extractors are actually really important.
These things, the gun must be able to be locked in a position while travelling. The vehicle must be able to do at least 45 kilometres an hour on good road, weigh no more than 10 tonnes whilst travelling, no more than 2 metres high, must be stable when firing uphill, downhill, or when sideways on a slope, must be able to climb a dry slope of 30 degrees, cross water obstacles of 75 centimetres, and carry enough fuel and oil to travel 200 to 250 kilometres. There must be a path from the driver's compartment to the fighting compartment, radio and portholes for the PPSH SMGs, submachine guns.
Pistol port's always a bad idea, but yeah.
Oh, they had them though. I mean, they can be closed. With the development of the Zeiss 3 76mm divisional field artillery gun in 1942, it was 3 times faster to build and 2/3 the cost of the previous F-22 76mm gun, and able to be mounted on a lighter gun carriage due to a better recoil design. Soviet factories were able to build more of these reliable and effective guns faster than needed by the towed artillery. And so they were able to be mounted in whatever was needed. Just
quickly, Steve Grimes has joined us from the Sonoran Desert. Hello, Steve. And Harms has got a little shout out here asking, what are they drinking?
Where is the Sonoran Desert? I've never heard of that one.
Steve, tell us where the Sonoran Desert is. Sounds like somewhere in California to me, but...
I mean, as Australia's got a hell of a lot of great big deserts, I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, we're not Googling that while we go, so if someone can help us out in the comments, that'll be great. All right, Rob, please do continue.
All right, the 76mm HE round, high explosive round, was big enough for the divisional artillery role, as well as close infantry support of taking out fortifications, strong points, and troops in the open. And the 76mm gun with the armor-piercing and APCR round was...
Huge array of ammunition for this thing was a big part of it, yeah.
Was just good enough to perform an anti-tank role. So, what's that so go to? Anyway, the end war design and development. So, okay, here's the fun bit.
Sure. Just quickly, the Sonoran Desert is Arizona. Thank you to everyone who jumped in a comment there. But, yep.
There we go. All right, now, here's a fun one. Roof on, roof off. Why? Because Commandant Stalin says so. Who told you to put that roof on? Take that roof off. Why is there no roof on this vehicle? No, not that one. The other roof. Yes, you can have a tent, but not that one roof. You have to, and only so you can mount the anti-aircraft gun. So this is a fun little game we used to play in the army. You say, on the bus, off the bus. Who told you to get on the bus, get off the bus? So roof on, roof off. The SU-76 started with a roof off. Then Comrade Stalin ordered that it should have a roof on. Then the 76M removed it to save weight so as not to overload the transmission. The lack of roof had pros and cons. Pros, better visibility, easy connection with the supporting infantry. Cons, exposure to weather, snipers, grenades, mortars, and shell splinters. And, as John said, aircraft. It was recommended that the self-propelled regimental commanders, self-propelled guns, regimental commanders be mounted in T-34s so they weren't taken out so easily. It didn't happen. Troops in the field mounted their own armoured roofs for protection, but these were unsanctioned. When trials were done to modernise the 76M in 1944, they installed an armoured roof. The crew could get by with the rear hatch open, but you couldn't have that in combat. But as the ventilation fans only worked whilst the engine was on, and that was too uneconomical to run while they were doing an artillery function.
Which is when they're sitting in a park waiting for fire missions, dropping the shells. You can't have the engine running the whole time or you burn through a lot of diesel.
But without the fans, the fighting compartment filled with gases, which went firing and then poisoned the crew. So they took the roof off again. But this time, they gave them a tarp to cover the rear. The initial tent was further improved so that it could be folded down without dismounting from the vehicle, meaning crews could start firing from the march. The metal bars for the tent across the top of the rear included the mount for the DT machine gun for the anti-aircraft defence. I
do feel that, and the Americans kind of did this in the very late war tank destroyers, that, having a significant gap at the top of the fighting compartment, but then just a sheet of something that'll keep shell splinters out, it's sort of a nice halfway point where it's giving it some useful protection and shade and shelter from the rain. But it's still heavily ventilated and easy to communicate in and out of
and cold
position.
But it really was. There are so many stories about, okay, did these things have roofs? Why? They started out with roofs, and they started out without roofs, and then then Stalin said, no, you got to have a roof on it. Then they took the roof off in order to save weight, so it didn't overload the transmission, and then they put a roof back on. But then they said, no, you can't. That was then poison the crew. So take it off. So
yeah, but you get the stuff with Patton famously, any sort of crew expedient, added protection, tracks and sandbags and logs on the outside of the tank. He was saying, get it off, it's slowing you down, and the enormous problems that tanks coming into the Third Army on temporary secondments suddenly getting screamed at by the general, but for things that were totally okay in their army. Anyway, so it's always a real tussle with this stuff.
Yeah. At the war's end, when the SU-76 was deemed unsatisfactory for ongoing use, efforts were made to develop a more heavily armed and armoured self-propelled gun with either a 100 or 122mm gun, which was able to withstand a frontal hit from a 88mm PaK-43 for the Soviets to continue to use, but these never left the drawing board. Instead, the Soviets still had 5,800 SU-76Ms, mostly modernised, that means with the TARP and with the DT machine gun, available that would continue to fill the role of self-propelled artillery, as nothing else was being built to do the job that needed to be done. Post-war developments. So, after 1945, as the vehicles were already so reliable with parts and trained maintainers and no money or drive to redesign them, the only changes made post-war were to install a newer pair of engines. These were the GAZ-51s, supercharged truck engines that provided a little bit more power, but mostly provided a more reliable engine. Now, doctrine for how to use self-propelled guns.
Well, a multi-purpose self-propelled gun, and this is where this sort of falls into the neither fish nor fowl. It definitely replaced light tanks, which is why we're talking about it in a tank podcast. But it also did, divisional artillery. It also did,
close infantry support.
Yeah, close infantry support.
Anti-tank rolls.
And it was written in their doctrine that any time tanks are encountered, their role is to destroy the enemy tanks. So it's a big it's complicated.
So, doctrinally, the directive was that self-propelled guns are not tanks. They complete the same objectives that artillery does, not tanks. It is forbidden to use the SU-76 in front of infantry or send them to capture some objective. But that didn't stop some commanders from sending them forward on their own or with other tanks, which had its own problems. So going forward, a line abreast with a bunch of T-34s, left and right of you, meant that they could not engage tanks to their left or right in order to hit the weaker sides of the enemy tanks. Without a turret, if they turned the whole vehicle, their shots would be blocked by their own T-34s left or right of them. On the offensive, and back to the doctrine, on the offensive, as in defence, when enemy tanks or self-propelled guns appear, the SU-76 batteries ignore all other objectives and fire immediately at enemy tanks or self-propelled guns. The order of opening fire is covered by existing manuals. On the tank combat, this task remains a priority until all enemy tanks are suppressed or chased off.
Which further nuances and complicates is this a tank kind of issue? And you've always got the issue, and I've referred to in the past as the battlecruiser fallacy. If you've got something that looks like a tank, commanders on the ground are going to use it like a tank. Similarly, British battlecruisers shouldn't have been put in position of fighting the entire German high seas fleet at Jutland, but because they looked like battleships, they got used like battleships and they blew up and killed thousands of sailors. Anyway.
Now, some units were kept as self-propelled artillery within larger artillery formations, but it was the SU-76's involvement with the rifle divisions that made it stand out. As most SU-76s were formed part of the self-propelled artillery battalion/regiment, usually 21 vehicles, that would be part of a rifle division. So the Soviet by the end of the war's end, there were 119 self-propelled gun regiments. The Soviet rifle divisions were organised for offensive operations with limited logistical support. They were not there to hold the line, but to break through it. And having their own integral self-propelled artillery, they could direct them to provide a preparatory bombardment, then join the advance as the rifle battalions hit the line.
This is the value of organic assets. It doesn't matter how good or bad they are. Having them in your line of control and your table of organisation is.
So then they would then provide close infantry support to take out strong points, and when the inevitable German armoured counterattack occurred, they could take out Nazi Panzers, assault guns, and SPGs as they came in.
Except for the Tigers, but that's what the IS-2s are for.
Yeah. This doesn't mean that other supporting elements, tanks, artillery, and engineers, were not also present. Just that the rifle division commander owned and controlled the SU-76s, and they could not be taken away to perform another task. So that's what John's talking about, is having them integral to the division, the rifle. I
would say organic, but yes. Yep. Just quickly, Cornelius has joined us. Hello, Connie. Good to see you. Raghaus noted, so could be used similar to the Stug series. I would argue that the final evolution of the SU-76M was closer to what was envisaged with the Stug than the way the Stugs actually got used. But in that its infantry support role was, kind of key to it.
Maybe, but they were still separate to the rifle divisions. So,
sure.
they were assault guns. Yeah. Assault guns operated by the artillery. Anyway, notes.
Also like Stugs.
No, the Stugs were operated by the artillery. Yeah. Notes. It needed a machine gun. It would often mount captured MG-34s, but did not get a Soviet MG, the Degetyarev. How are we going to pronounce that one?
Degetyarev, I think.
There you go. Until April 1945. But to effectively use a machine gun, it actually needed more crew. So it actually worked better with infantry support of at least 2 to 3 submachine gunners, or preferably 6 to 8 tank riders, especially in late 44 and 45. When on the advance, going through German defences, towns, when the self-propelled gun regiments could easily be separated from the infantry they were supporting.
I mean, the infantry loved catching a ride on the tank. You know, yeah, is it a tank or not? Anyway, they love catching a ride on the vehicle, and the vehicle loved having people on it who had submachine guns. So it was a virtuous circle on that. For all that as we've said before, the crews hated being in these, but the infantry loved having them around.
Right. So only carried 60 rounds, but on the advance they would often fire 80 to 90 rounds a day out to a respectable range of 13 kilometres.
So just quickly, Tasman's noted that the Stug was a better tank destroyer. Can't argue with that completely.
It had a lot more. It had a lot more targets to fire at.
Yeah, completely agreed. The Stug was a better tank destroyer, but the Stug could no sooner fly to the moon than do a fire mission on a target 10 kilometres away. So, in terms of general usefulness of having the asset around,
we got 9,000 Stug 3s versus 14,000 of these.
Yeah, so. But also, you know, let's not forget that. Yeah, this thing is filling a lot of different roles, and also still being a useful tank destroyer. Yeah,
and doing it on the advance rather than the Stug, doing it on the defence,
and also only 10 tons, which as we've endlessly talked about, a 10-ton vehicle can get over a lot of bridges that the bigger stuff can't.
All right. It only carried 60 rounds, but on the advance would fire 80 to 90 rounds a day out to a respectable range of 13 kilometres. And after 500 to 600 rounds, it would then have to spend a day in maintenance. So you having to manage all that sort of stuff on the advance. The mass artillery barrages that preceded an attack would cause the floor of the fighting compartment to be filled with spent shell casings, and sometimes there was not enough time to stow away the empties, and these would then get caught underfoot or under the firing pedal or under the breech, impairing or damaging the operation of the vehicle when they joined the advance. So when they went from firing indirect to joining up with the infantry and going forward.
Okay, we've hit an exciting moment, Rob. The beer tube is empty. All right.
So we have to bring in the Commander's Reserve.
Bring on the Commander's Reserve.
Which is I'm calling the Cooks and Clarks. And then after that, we have the battalion headquarters coming in.
Okay.
So we do have spares.
We will be fine. Yep. Yes.
The mix of 68 rounds was more for more HE, as that was the main role, and only 15 AP and 10 APCR rounds were carried. The lightweight of the SU-76 made it effective in swampy terrain. In Belarus in 1944, it was able to bypass Nazi strong points built on firm ground by advancing through the swamps and with light infantry and engineers and mounted surprise attacks and continue all on their way to Berlin. But it wasn't as good in the snow. The power and the ability of the T-34 in the snow meant that all other vehicles looked poor. They tried designing snowshoes, grousers slash track extensions for the SU-76, but these would take 20 to 30 hours to install and added an extra 230 kilos to the weight of the tank. At which
point the crew's like, can we have that on the roof, please?
Yeah. But when they sent them off for trials, the testers mounted these grousers on the tracks, then took them on a highway march, about 120 kilometres, and then on snow on a dirt road. And surprisingly, they failed with most of the grousers falling off the tracks.
I've always thought track extenders just look like things that are going to break. You roll over a rock, boom.
But you wonder what the testers were thinking, because they already knew the travelling capabilities of the SU-76, but it was how it performed in deep snow that they really, really wanted the results for, which is which is the one test they did not conduct.
Right.
So the grousers failed, and the SU-76 was expected to go through without them through deep snow. Right. So I don't know what the testers buddy on about those things. Obviously, they are having a bad day, and just went and said, "Let's just buddy do what we were told to do and go from there."
It's always a case of what has management asked you to actually test, and
you tick off those KPIs. Doesn't matter what the KPIs are, just tick them off.
British battle cruisers, just fire really fast. Don't worry about aiming. Yeah.
The SU-76 also had issues in mountainous terrain with the following notes made. The GAZ-203 engines did not provide sufficient power at slopes of 40 degrees. The main clutch doesn't handle slopes greater than 35 degrees. The conical gears twist up. Final drives wear out as a result of frequent turns in the disc warp.
Sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you. Tasman is throwing shade on and also hands on Chinese beer making. Yes, there's a lot of bad beer in China. There's a lot of excellent beer in China. I've been to China and drunk the beers, let me tell you. I would say there are some that give you awful hangovers because they're full of formaldehyde, and that's terrible. But there's a lot of really good stuff too. Please continue.
The brake bands do not function well at climbs and descents of 30 degrees and burn out. The final drives do not handle the load. The teeth of the large cylindrical gear crumbles. Idlers and tracks come off during sharp turns on mountain roads. So there you go.
There's the de-tracking issue.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Right, operators. The Soviet Union and USSR remained in service through to the 1950s and then as training vehicles through to the 1960s.
A bit like in British Empire service, Bren gun carriers universal carriers, being really great for training, getting tank crews started in the ideas of how you move a tracked vehicle around. This would be a kind of similar thing as a really good starting point.
Now we've got Chase.
Chase has joined us. He's been commenting a lot on our
from Missoula
on the shorts, and so it's good to see you joining the main show, Chase. Excellent.
All right, the Nazis captured an unknown number of Su-76s and used them. Poland, the Polish communists were given 130 Su-76s during the war, and they remained in service through to the 1950s. Czechoslovakia got 70 from 1949. East Germany fielded 260 through to the 1960s before giving them to their border guards, who then used them through to the 1970s.
That's a significant asset for border guards. Then again, looking at ICE agents in America today,
CBB, the guys who are not smart enough to be to become cops, and Anyway, Albania and Bulgaria bought some in 1947. Yugoslavia were given 52 in 1947.
I just want to note, Alan has said every time John says battle cruiser, we downwind down the hatches. So good work, battle cruiser.
Romania bought 102 in 1947 and another 250 through till 1957. North Korea, where excuse me.
It's all right, Rob. Come
on. Beer.
Beer will fix everything.
All right. North Korea were given 132 prior to the start of the Korean War. Most of these were lost or captured after the Incheon landings. Chinese communists were given over 700 from 1950 to 1954. They stayed in service.
At this point, it's like, because the Chinese won the war in 19...
I was making the point. They were giving them to the communists, not to the nationalists, even though the war was over.
Sure, but I'm just saying, if you're the Chinese, you're like, yeah, thanks. We won the war in 1949. Now you're giving us some help. Before that, we had to use captured Japanese medium tanks. And now the good stuff comes.
I think they were giving them some T-34s before that. Anyway, they stayed in service in China for a long time, along with being used for training and also as the chassis for movie tanks. The propaganda arm of the Chinese PLA, just saying, we need something to depict Japanese or imperialist tanks. Here's the Su-76. North Korea got an unknown number of Su-76s in the 1950s that they mostly converted into anti-aircraft platforms.
They'd be good at that.
Afghanistan had 24 from the 1950s that were in use by the Afghan Royal Army until the 1970s. Like the Renault FT, individual vehicles lingered in the country through to the 2000s.
I mean, if you're some militia in some godforsaken hilly part of Afghanistan and you've got this tank holdover from 50 years ago...
That works.
That you can fuel it up and, it makes sense. Although machining new parts until quite recently was extremely hard, but now we've got... all these CNC lathes.
Have you seen the movie The Beast recently? Like the way he pulls out, the old guy in the cave pulls out certain bits in order to insert other certain bits to make the gun work and whatever.
Although, you know what? We haven't even got it in the run sheet, but we do need to talk about the Tiger.
Der Tiger.
Der Tiger, yeah.
Yes, which we talk about on another podcast, but not ours.
Not ours.
Yes. Anyway, conflicts. The Great Patriotic War. That's what we call the World War II in the Soviet Union.
Now, why are you describing the Soviet-Japanese War of 1945 as different from World War II?
Because one ended, and then 3 months later, another one started.
Yeah, but World War II was still going when the Soviets...
From the Soviet point of view, the Great Patriotic War ended in April or May 45, and the Soviet-Japanese War didn't start till August. So there's a 3-month gap there where they were not at war. That's why, and that's how they do it. And it's a Soviet tank. All right, so the Soviet-Japanese War of 1945, 950 Su-76s were sent east and were there in theatre on the 5th of August 1945, 3 days before the Soviets declared war on the Japanese. They had large...
This is Zhukov's last symphony. The destruction he wrought on the Japanese in China. You know, the Americans like to think, oh, it was our nuclear weapons that ended the war. But it was a masterpiece of armored warfare that Zhukov initiated in this.
There wasn't a whole lot of combat, but anyway, with large numbers of M4 Shermans, T-34s, and Su-76s travelling long distances through the deserts and plains of Manchuria, it was useful to note how each of the vehicles performed. The reliability of all of them was good, around 87%. The Shermans wore out their road wheels quickest. The T-34 batteries failed most, but the Su-76s kept on going. So they're all around the 87%, but yeah, they all had different issues. So the Su-76s were found to be the most reliable armoured vehicles in the Far East. And some might say it was the entry of the Soviets into the war that prompted Japan to surrender. But there's been enough revisionist history already for 2026 to get into that.
Look, I would never argue that the nuclear weapons were not decisive in ending the war. It lit a fire under the Japanese leadership that, there were coups and counter-coups, and it was a wild time in Tokyo at that point, particularly because, when's the next B-29 going to appear overhead out of the clear blue sky and drop one of these things on us? At the same time, the complete destruction of the Manchukuo army in northern China was definitely something that they were paying attention to as well. That was what they thought was their reserve of power, and it was just gone.
In about 13 days from... Anyway, the Korean War. The Su-76s advanced south with the T-34-85s of the North Koreans at the start of the war in a supporting artillery role. Excuse me. The Vietnam War. I couldn't find any instances of the Su-76s advancing south in combat, but I did find a declassified CIA photo analysis of an armour park in North Vietnam, 6.7 nautical miles north of Dong Hoi, with a T-34, 4 PT-76s and an Su-76 and some armoured recovery vehicles in March 1969. So they were definitely present in North Vietnam during the war. All right.
Variance time!
I've kept it simple. Okay. Interestingly, it was a successful light tank hull that was repurposed. In most other situations, that reliable and effective chassis would be repurposed into all sorts of variants, bridge layers, recovery, artillery, observation, APC, flame tanks, etc. But
light bridge layers I've always thought were a waste of time. But
it was already filling 3 roles. Plus, it was light enough to be recovered easily. It could carry tank riders and did its own artillery observation. So there was no real need for further variants, especially as the T-34 was already filling all the other gaps. All right? But that said, the Soviets did want a dedicated light tank destroyer using a T-70 hull that could destroy any tank, and came up with a number of Su-85 models and other Su-76 and Su-57 versions. But when the prototypes were built and testing was carried out, the result was that everyone preferred the infantry support role of the Su-76. Yes, the Yes, the 57mm gun had better armor penetration, so they kept on trying to mount it onto the Su-76 chassis. But it could only fulfill the single role of anti-tank, which, whilst important, was not what that was needed day in, day out, being artillery and close infantry support.
Which is still a wild role to be doing, both close infantry support and also artillery. I mean, I'm not aware of other vehicles that have done the same thing. But in terms of having a whole bunch of them in the depot, and what do we need right now? We need an artillery fire mission. What do we need? What do we need now? We need someone to get in and fire some canister shot. I mean, it's kind of wild and it's kind of cool. I like it.
And also, what's the point of having an Su-85 when the thousands of T-34s are now mounting the same gun?
Yeah. Good point.
And
the Soviets had no shortage of heavy artillery as well.
Yeah. The Su-76M proved itself to be a powerful ally of infantry. Lightened versions of the vehicle were developed for airborne operations. In 1978, Romania built an APC built based on the SU-76 hull to carry 7 infantry, mounting a 14.5mm machine gun in a turret. They were designed for fighting in the Carpathian Mountains. They made 73 of these through to 1990, and they are still in service.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Legacy. Here's the important part. The second most produced armoured fighting vehicle of the USSR during World War II. It gets nowhere close to the 84,000 T-34s, but the fact that of the 14,000 of them built, 8,500 were combat losses shows that it was always in the thick of the fighting, even if it wasn't very survivable.
Look, I got an AI to write a little song about the SU-76, and I hadn't contemplated, but the AI did, that a Focke-Wulf 190 with a 20mm cannon was a death sentence to everyone in one of these vehicles, which comes back to the point I made earlier that it was dangerous enough to draw heavy attention, but not particularly protected. Yeah.
And I feel that the Su-76 has a bit of a contentious legacy. As noted above, there were a lot of combat losses, and I don't feel it was a very survivable experience. But I could be totally wrong, and leaping over the sides kept the crew, minus the driver, alive. But lack of machine gun for use against infantry probably made the crews feel a bit naked. But the infantry appreciated them. The Zeiss 3 gun was the biggest gun provided in close infantry support role, a role where the infantry commander could tell the big guns where the shells needed to be landed, and all he had to do was run up to the back of the vehicle and tell them, even better than a tank telephone or a doorbell. All the Su-76...
Hey, you! There, that bunker there, get it!
All the Su-76 crews wanted in return was for the infantry to go with them. Which didn't always happen. The rifle divisions would get tired or slow down or didn't feel like advancing. Just let the armour do it. And the next thing the Su-76 crews knew, they were in Germantown with 3 door knocker grenades landing in the fighting compartment. Not fun.
Well, any grenade would be a problem in the fighting compartment, but yeah.
An underappreciated tank vehicle, both then and now, overshadowed in the snow by the numbers and ability of the T-34, and without the big and scary 122mm or the 152mm guns, but it was there for the infantry in the swamps and in the fields, providing the preparatory bombardment, taking out the MG-42 bunkers and trying to get around the sides of a Panther. And it kept going all the way to Berlin and beyond.
All right, Rob, it's poll time. So we've had a very large number of votes for us in these. 17 votes, 76% saying a very useful and dangerous vehicle, and 24% on a death trap. So there we go. And
look, we haven't even had to deploy the
reserves.
The reserves.
Yeah,
so anyway, we're going to go to...
we're going to go to our interview with Peter Samsonov for more Su-76, and then we will be back in what we call the second half, where we've got some controversial views to share with you. So
what a surprise!
Yes.
Anywho, but there's other things to talk about as well.
Yeah. Anyway, I got to tell you, I'm thrilled that the technology is all working up until now in these ferocious heatwave conditions. Thank you, fossil fuel industry. We just love what you're producing for everyone. Okay, here we go with Peter Samsonov. We will see you folks soon. Okay, folks, so welcome back, and welcome back, long-term friend of the show, Peter Samsonov, and you have got a new book out, which we're very excited about. Can you tell the audience what you've got?
Absolutely. So my latest book is called Hetzer versus Su-76, Hungary 1945. And it focuses on the encounter between these two vehicles at the Battle of Lake Balaton in Hungary in March of 1945.
Excellent. Now, it was funny when I saw you had this book out, I thought I had never actually thought about Su-76 and Hetzer in a direct matchup, but considering they're both roughly 10-ton vehicles, they were in roughly the same places and fighting. Of course, it's actually quite a natural thing when you think about it. How did you come to make this matchup?
It was interesting. I mean, I started working backwards. I wanted to write about Lake Balaton, and then the question is, well, what do I? Because the Osprey dual format's fairly rigid, right? they've refined it over the course of decades, and it's a formula that works. And you need two vehicles that face off against each other. And the SU-76, I wanted to write about that because it's really the T-34. Yes, it's an important vehicle. It's not the only important vehicle, right? Everyone wants to talk about the T-34. No one wants to talk about the poor little SU-76. Getting a bit ahead of myself, but the SU-76 at Lake Balaton represented 1/4 of the armor of the Third Belarusian Front. So it wasn't really like a sideshow. It was one of the major kind of participants in the battle. And then the
Yeah, I mean,
question.
sorry. I mean, it was the second most produced armored fighting vehicle of the war, and essentially took over the light tank role in the Soviet army. So yeah, I mean, and to me, it kind of blew my mind. I saw it going around the track at Oz Armor Fest, and I thought I should know more about this vehicle. And then they were saying it's the second most produced Soviet vehicle of the war. And I was like, this is actually much more important than. And you know, I don't know everything about tanks, but I've been on this journey a while, and to be surprised by it says we're missing. There's a hole in the knowledge there.
Yep, there's a lot to find out. There's a lot of things that you don't really think about when it comes to these vehicles, especially some of the ones that have missed out from the spotlight. But yeah, you did mention that they're about equal weight. The chassis that both vehicles are based on. So the T-70 that the SU-76 was based on weighs about 9.5 tons, depending on the variant. The Panzer 38T that the Hetzer evolved from, it weighs something like 300 kilos more. So they were almost exactly the same in terms of weight. They were both based on these light tanks that went out of production in 1942. As it very quickly turned out on the Eastern Front that the light tank, there's no room for light tanks anymore. So the Germans ended production of the Panzer II and the Panzer 38T to focus on using the chassis and self-propelled guns. The Soviets hung on a bit longer. They produced the T-70, they produced the T-80, a couple of dozen T-80s, which was essentially a T-70 with a two-man turret, but eventually reached the same conclusion, is we might as well take the components that we've tested and use them to make a self-propelled gun. Now, what they wanted in a self-propelled gun was vastly different, and I do kind of explore the why they went in different directions and what they ended up with. That being the Hetzer is a tank destroyer, and the Su-76M is not. It's essentially a mechanized ZIS-2 divisional field artillery piece. Excuse me, But interestingly enough, both of these vehicles ended up fighting in the role of the other. So at Lake Balaton, the unit with the most Hetzers was actually a Hungarian assault artillery regiment. So the Hetzers were used as assault guns in support of infantry rather than as tank destroyers. And then on the Soviet side, the Su-76 was very often used as a tank destroyer. You weren't supposed to do it that way. It was not great at the role, but the tactics manual for the Su-76 straight up said, if tanks appear on the battlefield, your number one goal, no matter what your other orders were, is to defeat those tanks. Once you've destroyed them or driven them away, then you can resume all your other duties. But your tanks become your first priority if they show up on the battlefield. And the 76 millimeter gun was not the most powerful gun when it came to anti-tank rolls, but it could penetrate the front armor of any German medium tank and the side armor of any German tank, especially when using the subcaliber ammunition that was issued specifically for this purpose. So the Su-76, yeah, it's kind of a 10-ton light self-propelled gun with bulletproof armor, but it can really punch above its weight when it comes to fighting enemy tanks.
Yeah, it's interesting, the comparison between the two tanks. And when you put them head to head, the Hetzers basically it's fairly similar gun, but and weight and armor, but the visibility between the two of them and the roles that they were playing, one being an ambush tank destroyer and the other one being with its low profile and limited traverse, and the other being a support essentially divisional artillery slash infantry support vehicle, performing the role of a light tank, and with much greater visibility for the commander being able to just stick his head up out of the fighting compartment in the rear. It'd be a strange old fight between the two of the differences of who can see what and who can get the first shots off accurately.
Oh, absolutely. I had the pleasure of examining the fighting compartments of not one but two Hetzers. One was at the Panzermuseum Münster, and one was at the Canadian Tank Museum here in Oshawa. And it's an experience. Even without a full load of ammunition, full load of equipment, without anybody else inside, it is quite cramped. It's very difficult to move around. And you can really see it's one thing to just say, "Oh, it's the gun loads from the left, but from the right, but the loader sits on the left." It's a completely different thing
the
to.
loader having to reach over the gun to put the rounds in, and the
Oh yeah,
commander sitting at the back with no hatch. Well, sorry, either has to open the rear hatch to face backwards or stick his head right out because there's no cupola.
yeah. Meanwhile, the commander is reaching back over the loader to get to the radio because the radio is on the left side of the hull, and the commander sits on the right. So it's this. I don't know. There's a theory that Alexei Surin designed it badly on purpose. And, well, the fact that the Soviets, when they occupied Czechoslovakia and you had Dankiewicz combing through the ranks for Nazi collaborators, the fact that the guy who designed these armored vehicles for Germany walked away scot-free suggests that, maybe he was able to make that argument saying that I made these tanks really bad on purpose, let me live.
Brilliant.
That's a fascinating argument. That'll really annoy the Hetzer fans to hear that one. But I mean, the Hetzer, it looks like a coffin inside. The armor isn't thick enough to offer a lot of protection, just get in everyone's way. In a lot of ways, in a straight matchup, you look at the SU-76, which it looks more purpose-built to be a gun platform than the Hetzer, which is, a coffin with a gun sticking out the front.
I do write quite a bit in defense of the Hetzer, right? It's not a one-sided comparison. The Hetzer obviously has the gun and the armor. It has quite formidable armor in the front, so almost as much as the much heavier Jagdpanzer IV. Same gun, of course, in a much lighter chassis. So that being able to do that at all, forgetting how much you had to sacrifice for it, is an achievement of engineering. That's a considerable amount of firepower to put in a little package. But now, you're right, is you have to make it as small as possible, because if you make it a couple of inches wider, give a little bit more leg room, that means it's bigger, that means it's heavier, that means you have to cover a larger volume with armor, and that drives the weight up. And that drives the reliability down, because the engine that was supposed to go into the Hetzer never did. They used an old engine that they had in production, which was weaker, less reliable, and, well, you got what you got. If the most important thing was armor and firepower, then you got it. But turns out that there's a lot more that goes into designing a armor fighting vehicle than just putting the biggest gun and the thickest armor that you can find.
Now, one of the reasons sorry, Rob, go.
Yeah, getting back to the story about the Hetzer designer getting let go. Now, the poor old engine designer for the SU-76M being lauded first and then sent to the front because it didn't work as well, and then trying to bring him back before he got killed when not quite making it. I'm sorry, don't have my notes in front of me to remember his name, but the story of being sent to the front because the engines weren't working well, and then being by Stalin, and then being recalled by Stalin because he needed somebody to be able to fix it and get it going again. Seems very similar stories, I guess. Who's involved.
I do bring this story up a lot because the stereotype is the moment anything goes wrong at all, Stalin sends a goon to shoot you in the back, and you can never ever admit to any mistake ever because that's how you get killed. In this case, the story proves pretty much the opposite. So Ginsburg, very famous tank designer, he was among the first engineers who specifically studied to be a tank designer in the USSR. So in the 1920s, associated with lots of very high profile projects, he was basically a rock star, and he had the ego of a rock star. So the T-60 tank used a truck engine. It was fine for a 6-ton tank. The T-70 weighing half again that much, obviously you can't just put the same engine in it. So they did the next best thing and put the same engine in it twice. When Ginsburg started making his first self-propelled gun chassis, it was still based on T-60 components. So he did a really simple thing, which dates back all the way to the Whippet of the First World War, where if you have two engines, why not have two gearboxes? One gearbox per engine. On the Whippet, they weren't synchronized. On the T-60 chassis, they were synchronized. And it kind of worked well enough for the concept to cement itself and kind of propagate down to the new chassis built on T-70 components, which eventually made the SU-76. Now, the problem was that something that worked on a 6-ton tank doesn't necessarily work on a 9-ton tank, and this was one example. The design that he built had a fatal weakness in the transmission. Unfortunately, he refused to admit this was the case. And even as people at the factory, even other people in his design bureau would suggest that, hey, maybe there's something wrong with what we're building, he would say, no, it's got to be someone else's fault. He blamed this factory, which built the gearboxes. They said, we're putting the exact same gearboxes into trucks and they work fine in our trucks. He was blaming the army, and then the army said, well, we're using these same gearboxes on the T-70 and on the trucks, and they work fine. So it was kind of a finger-pointing situation. In the meantime, his designers were actually working in secret from their own boss to fix this problem. And when Stalin caught wind of it, he was naturally furious. Ginsburg deservedly caught the fallout. Not because he allowed the defect to occur, because if you shoot all of your engineers for making something with bugs in it, then you'll run out of engineers very quickly. It was the cover-up.
A/B testing with bullets, I guess.
Yeah. So for this cover-up, he was stripped of his position. He retained his rank, so he was still, in addition to his desk job, he held the rank of engineer colonel. And he was sent to the front lines as the technical deputy commander of, I forget which tank brigade it was. So despite causing very measurable harm, both in financial harm, human lives lost, right, time lost getting this vehicle into production, he was fired from his job, rightfully so, but he was just sent to active service as an officer, according to his specialization. He wasn't just given a rifle and pointed towards Berlin. He did die in battle pretty quickly, but he very much had a chance of kind of just spending the war on the front lines and coming home, as a war hero, rather than a disgraced engineer.
I could also imagine there might be some merit to giving him a couple of months on the front lines with the tank unit to just have a look at what's actually required. If he had survived and come back, he probably would have gained some valuable insight, I would have thought.
It's possible. There have been examples. For example, Tsiganov. He's known for his very interesting BT tank modifications. His designs weren't very good. He was sent to teach, I forget, some academy somewhere. But again, he wasn't executed. He was just kind of shunted off to the side. When the war broke out, he went to fight in the front lines. And there's a couple more designs that come out of him. I'm not sure if you've seen the T-34 with the concrete block armor. It's
No,
very
that sounds fascinating.
yeah. It was kind of like a blade of armor with concrete blocks, and if the block got smashed, then you can just put up a new block, and very resistant against APCR, so tungsten core penetrators. Very resistant against heat. Small problem: each concrete block weighed between 3 and 6 tons, and so
Mm,
if you have lifting equipment, yeah, you can put that on a T-34. But the whole point of this system was that you should be able to essentially up armor your tanks whenever you had concrete. So two samples were built, fully equipped, sent to the proving grounds, and the proving grounds engineers went, "What in God's name is this?" And they never even bothered testing them. So, uh, unfortunately, frontline experience doesn't always result in the best designs, but still, no, they at least took the photos and kind of did a technical description of it. So we know what happened that survived. This guy also died in combat. So.
mm. Anyway, getting back to Hetzer, one of the things, sorry, Hetzer and SU-76. One of the things that when we did the Hetzer episode, was struck by was how industrial facilities that can handle a 40-ton vehicle are quite few and relatively easily targeted, whereas there are much greater number of facilities that can handle a 10-ton vehicle. Which, even if there are deficiencies in the vehicle, still gives it some merit all of its own, that you can be diversifying your production. I guess, how did they, in your book, without wanting to give away too much of the book, how did they go when they came up against each other directly, where basically they were in terrain that only lighter vehicles could get to anyway?
So the terrain around Lake Balaton, it was quite snowy in the winter. But even in the winter, kind of, there were the three relief operations to break the siege of Budapest, Conrad 1, 2, and 3. There was a lot of difficulty using tanks in those operations, particularly because the terrain, even when everything was frozen, was not very good for tanks. The best tank country is between Lakes Balaton and Valence, which you had to kind of going around the lake to get to Budapest was not. It would take too long. It would use too much fuel. The Germans didn't want to do it. They had no choice at this point. This was the only good tank country. So whether you're using a Hetzer or a King Tiger, really you had to go through around this point. I don't think there's any part of the front line where you only had to use lighter vehicles, because only lighter vehicles could get through. Now, the Battle of Lake Balaton is often, people just focus on that space between Lakes Valencia and Balaton. There were actually three main axes of attack. One was that one was between the Drava River and Lake Balaton in the south. And that was kind of a secondary direction. There were no Tigers, King Tigers, Panthers. All the Germans had were Stugs and Hetzers, and the Soviets had two SPG regiments. One regiment had no SPGs. They only had T-34 tanks. I don't know how that happened. But it was this kind of face-off of, it was light and medium armor, not because of the terrain, but because this was just a secondary direction. It wasn't considered as important. The third direction, which doesn't make it into the book because there weren't any Hetzers or SU-76s there, is Army Group E against the 1st Bulgarian and 3rd Yugoslavian armies. The Germans, they don't really get very far there, and there are no AFVs that I wanted to talk about, so I didn't really cover it in the book. But it's important to remember that the Eastern Front, it wasn't just the USSR versus Germany. You also had allies on both sides. In this case, the Bulgarians and Yugoslavs fighting with the Red Army, and the Hungarians fighting with the Germans.
But how did we go when the Hetzers and the 76s did come into contact?
So in theory, the front armor of the Hetzer was completely impervious to that of the Su-76. In praxis, there is a photo from that battle of a Hetzer with a big 76 millimeter hole in the front armor. So the quality of the plate, there's a lot of studies, period reports even, about whose armor is better. You can see claims that Czech armor was not as good as German armor. You can see British studies saying that German armor is about on par with Czech armor. I haven't conclusively been able to say, this is better than that. But by the end, by the end of the war, German armor has been declining in quality kind of across the board. So 70 millimeters of front armor, particularly the cast armor of the gun mantlet, does not really offer the full protection that it otherwise would have. So at close range, with a lucky shot, the Su-76 is able to penetrate the front. And as you mentioned, the Hetzer is essentially blind. So it's possible for an Su-76 to spot its target first, hit it from the side. The side armor of the Hetzer is quite thin. You can penetrate it with the 76 millimeter gun, even at a relatively sharp angle. So unless the Hetzer can present its front armor and only its front armor to the Su-76, then it can still be penetrated in return at quite a long range.
Yeah, I mean the Hetzer was in my study of it the most effective when it could line up a specific, down a road or at a crossroad. And have its gun sights on that position, so that it had decent visibility of a very small area and wait for the enemy to come to it. But in a war of maneuver, then you lose that advantage, and the command and control gets very hard, doesn't it?
Yep. The name gets translated as like punter or trapper or in lots of different ways. The German Tank Museum actually has a whole video about what is Hetzung. Hetzung is a exhaustion hunting, essentially. It's when you have your hunting dogs, the Hetzers, but their job isn't to attack the bear or whatever you're hunting. It's not to kill it in direct confrontation. It's you don't let it rest. You don't let it sleep. You sort of keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until it collapses from exhaustion. And I think that's a really good name for the Hetzer, since the Hetzer, like you said, its goal is not to go up against enemy tanks in a one-on-one face-to-face fight. Its goal is to sit, in an ambush. You see the enemy, you shoot the enemy, and you run away. So, thick front armor would let you bounce a couple of follow-up shots, but ideally you would just back out and scoot.
Which is where the commander facing backwards is actually a bonus.
Yeah, there are a lot of other design decisions that I can sort of understand. That one I cannot. Very strange layout of the vision devices.
Right, Rob, any other questions from you?
The open topness of the Su-76M, it makes them more susceptible to overhead bursts and so forth. But the benefits of the visibility, even if the Russians are they should be able to deal with the cold. But it seems like especially as their role is for artillery support rather than anti-tank as a tank destroyer. So it seems like a much better design decision. Plus, you don't have all the issues of a great big gun blowing off in a enclosed compartment. Your thoughts on if there was any improvements they could have had with having a roof on them, or whether or not they should have been fully enclosed or anything like that?
So the roof is a very interesting story. The Su-76, the original design, started out in production without a roof. The third production series had a roof, and then it got taken out of production because of this transmission issue. Uh, the SU-76M then went into production without a roof because the primary goal was reliability, and to improve reliability as much as possible, you need to decrease weight, and the roof is extra weight. That's why the back is so short and the sides are cut down, is just to save as much weight as possible. Um, Now, as you can imagine, the crews themselves weren't particularly thrilled with that, and you can actually see some photos of sheet metal roofs. One of the best things you can do is find a knocked out Panzer IV, because then you can take its shorts and armor and just put it on top. This increased the weight of the vehicle. This improved, degraded its lifespan a little bit. Put more strain on the engine and the suspension. In 1944, there was an actual study of, okay, everybody seems to want a roof. How do we put a roof on this? Unfortunately, whenever this happened, the end users don't want to lose anything, and all they want to do is gain. In this case, what they didn't want to lose was ventilation and vision. And it's really hard to beat unrestrained vision. So there was a project to put a roof on top. It had rotating Mark IV periscope. They had a version with a commander's cupola. They tried a lot of different things. It's impossible to match just being able to stick your head out and look around. Even the best vision device can only be as good as the Mark I eyeball. So the roof never really took off. Ventilation was also an issue. I mean, you can put an extractor fan, but there were certain fire missions, right? You want to just be slamming ammo in that gun and firing as quickly as possible. And in ideal conditions, the ZIS-3 can put out 20 rounds per minute. So you're firing a shot off every 3 seconds. Your loader won't be able to keep that up for long, but you can keep it up long enough that your whole crew chokes on gases. And that's where really having an open roof, that it really helps. The end result, the SU-76 that went into production in 1945, it had improved protection from the rear and the sides. So the ones, if you've ever been to the Bovington Tank Museum, they have one there from the Korean War. It has that kind of improved protection. But even at the very end, no roof. The best you could hope for is a tarp to save you from rain.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I like, and obviously the Soviets liked as well about Su-76, was that it was sort of a multi-role utility in a way, in that it could be in a divisional artillery role, or it could be in a tank destroyer role as needed. But if you just have lots of them, then you've just got more, and then you adapt them as the circumstances demand.
Yep. The Red Army really didn't see a distinction between self-propelled guns and tank destroyers. Even the SU-100, the ISU-122, they were developed ground up as tank destroyers. Their whole point was to be able to destroy enemy heavy tanks. Both of these vehicles were organized into SPG regiments. So not tank destroyer regiments, SPG regiments. And their gunners would train in SPG missions like indirect fire. One of the reasons why the ISU-122 was quite liked is not because it could destroy tanks, but because it could destroy barricades. So very popular in Berlin. The Su-76, unfortunately, because of the lack of roof in Berlin and in Vienna, they took heavy losses due to attack from above. In this case, not having a roof, I mean, even if you did have a roof and somebody's checking Molotov cocktails down at you, you're not going to have a great time. The ability to cooperate with infantry, the fact that you're always accompanied by infantry, unlike a tank might not have any infantry assigned to support it, or I mean, it should, but sometimes it doesn't. That was kind of your only saving grace, is you have some riflemen watching your back and watching the roof.
Yeah, no, I agree. Su-76 wasn't the best for urban warfare, but I think that was accepted by its if not its designers, at least by the people who are paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, tanks in urban environments are always vulnerable. That's why I like the name of the urban survival kit on the Abrams tank,
Yeah, Tusk.
where they very much agree is what we're going for is not like kill everyone, be the best, be invulnerable, is just survival. Because
And don't drive into a basement.
Don't
Don't drive through a building and fall into a basement.
Yeah. Ramming something with a tank is a skill. You can't just drive a tank into something and expect it to come out unharmed just because it's big and heavy.
All right, Peter, can you tell people where they can get your book?
Sure. My book is available directly from Osprey's website. It is available on Amazon. It is available wherever fine books are sold. So if you have a local bookshop, come on, drop down there and see if they have any other Osprey titles there. You'll be able to buy it.
Great, and of course your Tank Archives is what social media are you on these days?
Yep. So tankarchives.com is my primary website. I have a YouTube channel, which you should be able to get a link below. I am on Facebook. I am on Blue Sky. I am on X. Yeah, and I mean, I got an email, tankarchives@gmail.com. If all else fails, you can find me there.
Nice one. Okay, Peter, thank you so much for your time, and I hope the book goes really well. I need to get myself a copy, but all right, thank you.
All right, thanks for having me.
Take care. And for those who are watching the video of that interview, no, I have not dyed my hair green. It just came out that way. All the grey turned green, which is different from the time it all turned ginger. There was, I think it was December 2020. Yeah, there was mistakes were made. Anyway, once again, thank you to Peter Samsonov for his 4th interview with us. He's leading the way. He's already got his Totally Tank coffee mug for 3 interviews. So what's next in the prize pool, John?
Well, I think he needs to get to 6 before we do the next prize. But normally it will be a tie at that point, I think. But we'll,
nice. There you go. So if anyone else wants to get in on the Totally Tank coffee mug interview bonanza, get in touch with totallytank.net. And speaking of interviews, John and I sat down with Lottie the Tank Whisperer and her co-host Ted for their Turret Monster podcast last weekend, where we drive the direction of the podcast off the rails, which is what happens after a few beers and no script. That episode should be coming out in a few days on Tuesday the 2nd of February 2026. Look for the Turret Monsters podcast in the usual places or grab their RSS feed.
Now, I just want to quickly note that Paul Hardbottle has joined the chat, and I believe it's your birthday, so happy birthday, Paul. Yes. Now, oh, Jesus, Rob, we've got to the...
Thanking the patrons.
Thanking the patrons section, which means I need to use these controls. There we go. Okay, so the top tier, the Artificer tier, get the interview early and the ad-free video and audio of the show, and obviously a direct line to us as well for any things they want to talk about.
If they want to choose tanks, what they want to us to go over?
Ask for a tank. We're ready to go. Yeah. So, but we have in that tier, Brian Jenkins, Pear, Cornelius, Chris Pezet, Anton Gorbanov, Maxi Miss, Chicago John, Hans Vormhat. Oh, and thank you, Hans, enormously for the $50 you dropped us in the interview.
That'll go to me, don't you worry.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole case, yeah. Johnny Ut, Monty, and Jacob Caban. In our second tier, the Apprentice tier, who also get the show ad-free in video and audio. We have David Mulvaney, Scotch12, Floaty Burb, Steve Matthews, Jamie Stokes, Guy Hook, Jay Beckman-Strauss, Hans Wang, Henry Hemmerd, Dan Sapienza, who is running for office in Colorado.
Really?
Yeah.
He's moved back, has he?
No, that's Dan, not Tom. It's his brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
I've
Dan,
got to keep up with the Sapienzas.
Dan is an excellent bloke to have a beer with. And if you're in Colorado, vote for him. He's already in one elected office. He's moving up the ranks. So good work, Dan. Fight the good fight. Christoph Keller, Tony L, Elliot Spicer, Russell Phillips, Red Rum X. Oh, just quickly, Russell Phillips did contribute photographs from Bovington to the
thank you, Russell.
slideshow. So thank you. Always thank you, Russell. Red Rum X, Callum, Steve Brimfield, James Van Dyke, The Rain Man, Joe M, and new patron, Mark Dorner.
And
So-
I've got a shout out for Mark later on. Anyway,
Okay, right. Okay, and on that note, we turn the slideshow to the second half. There we go. Now, just quickly to remind people, the patrons and the Apple Bastardry, keep calm and carry on. But use a web browser to join us on Patreon because that way Apple doesn't take a 30% tax, which, they have all the money, we have none of the money. It seems better to give us more of the money than less of the money. And check out
we will use it for good.
Yes.
Called beer.
Yes, and also do check out our website, totallytank.net, to subscribe to the RSS feed or the mailing list so that no matter what the billionaires do with the algorithmic feeds, you can maybe find out what we're up to. It's a forlorn hope, but we still have it. Yes. All right, Rob, talk about Mark.
Yes. I also want to give a lovely shout out to Mark from Arkansas for his note just before Christmas. About listening to us as he works driving around the state, and I hope he enjoyed his Flying Horse Indian Lager. Stay safe, and speaking of beer, we are not quite
ready for the beer review.
We've got a few more to go.
You're going to need to really neck that to catch up with me, Rob.
You know what? I have training and experience. I will be able to achieve that.
Just knocking your beer down
KPIs,
as needed.
I can achieve these KPIs, just like I can achieve the KPIs of filling out the script for this episode at late last night.
Yeah.
I do my homework.
Now, I do want to note, Tasman has said, beer review, it's a bit hard to get Russian beer. What are we getting? Yeah, this is a closely guarded secret, as we have discussed. To our shame. We are ashamed of how closely we have guarded it in the past.
John has no idea.
Yeah.
All right, but anyway. It might be nice.
It's coming somehow.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It's what I can find. My little local shops has a great variety.
No, you have one of the best bottle shops in the world.
No. They only do craft beers though. These guys have lots of other beers as well as craft beers.
Right.
Yeah, this is my local cook shop. So anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go on a little rant. So enjoy this.
Strap in, folks.
Yeah,
it's rant time.
Let's talk some politics. We said last February that a fascist takeover of the USA had begun, and we've seen nothing since to suggest that isn't the case. And I also want to note there's an enormous number of public figures and academics who've been like, oh no, this wasn't fascist takeover. And the last month they're like, oh, this looks like fascism. It's like, yeah, you're disqualified from having opinions. Everyone who had a brain and eyes knew this was a fascist takeover.
Right now, John and I are wearing the T-shirts of tanks are always political and tanks, not just for fascists, all right?
Yeah.
So...
But we do want to note, because the new hate speech laws in this country, that please do not commit any acts of violence against fascists until war is declared, after which, go for it. So the imperfect but aspirational post-World War II order is being shredded for the benefit of people who see no value in anything but the personal accumulation of their wealth. They are liars, they are thieves, they are murderers, and a surprising number of them are pedophiles. They are not people you'd trust to look after your dog for a weekend. What has been surprising is the willingness of sensible-looking people on TV to say any awful thing to further this agenda and maintain their own careers. And while we're talking about current events, the penalty for not complying with law enforcement officers is determined by judges and is never death. Similarly, being on boats in international waters that someone somewhere in the intelligence establishment is flagged as carrying drugs is punishable by interception, inspection, trial, and if found guilty, judicial penalty, not hellfire missiles shrieking in out of clear skies. In the interest of balance, I do want to note I hold the Democrats at least partially to blame for trying to fool the American public into electing a corpse and creating the conditions under which this could have happened. They had 4 years to put a coup leader into prison. But for every mouth-breathing bully getting ready to type F-A-F-O, you know what freedom fundamentally is? It's being able to FA without being murdered. And I wrote that before the deaths in Minneapolis.
I was about to say, it's been a long time since we started the run sheet for this.
Yeah, and I just want to note that for political movements that bang on about traditional values and the Ten Commandments, they don't seem to have got the memo about thou shalt not kill. And if you don't think the political situation is going to end up about tanks, you're in for an unpleasant surprise. Anyway, back to just the tanks. Thank you for your indulgence. Rob.
Yeah, so Australia, we had a unfortunate event last December after the last episode where a terrorist event basically occurred in Australia and it's gone all around the world. But since then, the reaction has been to bring in new anti-hate laws and those gone through. But the thing is, do the new Australian anti-hate laws mean we can't be mean to fascists anymore, John?
I think it means we can't incite violence against fascists, which okay, fine. I think the laws are going to strike harder on the fascists because their message is always about hate and lies.
It's always a case of I mean, when bringing in any of these laws, it's a
unintended
case of
consequences.
Yeah, well, it's not even unintended. It's a case of they're intended. But the thing is, the political class want them to happen to other people, not to the billionaires and the media owners and everybody else. Anyway, all right.
We'll await guidance on YouTube for what our hate speech provisions are, but yeah. So it's been a long few weeks since the last podcast, so there's a lot of news to go over. We don't actually have it in the script, but I think, Rob, what do we think of the Tiger or the Tank on Amazon Prime?
Now, we did talk about this in the Turret Monster episode with Lottie and Ted. Spoilers, boys and girls. If you don't want to know what happens in Der Tiger, please just block your ears for a minute. But it was all a dream, John.
Look, it moved through 4 different genres. Was one of the big things that confuses people about it. Like it started as a war movie. There was a period as a horror movie. And then there was the whole, it was all just a dream as they were dying. And there was literally a moment where Sheridan was being like, no, they had to die. When the tank was on fire on that bridge, they all died, right? And then she's like, why are they all alive now?
Stranger things happened at the sea.
It turned out it was a dream as they were dying. But there was a lot of good things in it as well.
Their fear of the SU-100 as it came out from ambush and to take them on.
The SU-100 is a big bad. I kind of liked, and the way it
spending time at the bottom of the river and waiting for.
Well, that was another one with Sheridan, who's not a tank person. She was like, can tanks actually do that? And I was like, oh no, that bit is totally real. And it's funny, a lot of criticism of it. It's like, oh, they can't just drive under rivers with the snorkel. It's like, no, that's a real thing. But they definitely wouldn't stop halfway through and play tactical games. They would have kept driving.
They are not Robin Hood hiding under the in the pond with a reed straw, breathing out through that to avoid the Sheriff of Nottingham type thing. No, it's. You do not want to stop because, as they showed in the movie, you cannot be guaranteed that it's going to restart again.
Yeah. Anyway, so given that the flaws that seem like flaws early in the movie, and the trailers were like, why would you do Saving Private Ryan and a tiger? That makes no sense. And then it turns out this is all a device about the dream of the commander as he's dying in a burning tank.
Having committed atrocities
and feeling guilty about the atrocities. And yeah, there are moments when the Tiger is not handled in a tactically perfect way, but the reality of combat is that
people are flawed and
people make bad decisions in the stress of combat. So I can totally live with that.
The points when they were just getting out of the tank and wandering around. That seemed to really.
The number of the times they said crewmen dismount the tank.
I really like it in the tank. It's got lots of armor, and I can do stuff with it.
There's a lot of steel around. Yep. Okay, so Rob, you've got the review beer now.
We do.
Okay.
It is a Japanese beer because the SU-76 did fight the Japanese. Actually, just defeated them rather.
And this is Bright Brewery. This is not an actual Japanese beer. It's an Australian beer.
Oh, what?
That's made a Japanese style beer.
Well, I obviously didn't have my glasses on for this one.
Yeah.
I've got to. I mean, I'm an old man these days. I've got to hold things out at arm's length to be able to see anything.
But it does have a lot of Japanese on it. I'll
Japanese
give you that.
dark lager with a lot of Japanese things happening.
Yeah.
It's a tall boy, 5%, mountain crafted. I mean, I like Bright. Bright's lovely. It's a high country in Victoria.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the Bright Brewery, which is a lovely institution. And
all right, they tricked me. All right, is what I'm saying. Is that I
put a lot of Japanese writing on it, and it fooled you.
Yeah.
But let's briefly talk about the Bright Brewery, which I have been to, and I know some of the people there. So Bright is in the Victorian High Country, so it's the southern part of Australia at elevation. And, a weekend in Bright, you're literally driving around and there's a huge escarpment and there's paragliders all jumping off it. So they're filling up the sky. And there's a river that you've got, kids swimming in. And it's an idyllic place and setting, and the brewery is really good. So I just want
to share one of my own stories about Bright. Back when I was stationed in Bandiana in the army, I did
which is in Albury-Wodonga, between New South Wales and Victoria,
which is about 30 k's from Bright. Did a day trip out there and went around to one of these antique stores and saw a cane swagger stick in one of these antique stores, and I thought to myself, I'm a buddy. A young officer, I should have a swagger stick.
Yeah, I mean, your Batman should procure it for you.
No Batman these days. But anyway, so the old 50 centimetre cane swagger stick, I thought, I should get one of those. And I ever since, I've always regretted not grabbing that one out, because never would have I ever used it, but I would have liked to have had it. And it was a case of, it was, and when I went back there a couple of months later, it was gone. I was going, oh man, I just missed out. So yes, I did not. I missed, just like I totally missed that this was from Bright Brewery rather than from somewhere in Japan, even though it's called a
Kuridesu.
Yeah. All right, they tricked me. They got me real good. It's a Japanese dark lager, and let's see how it tastes.
Now, just quickly on the comments, Alan's noted there were 47,000 Tiger tanks made, otherwise there would not be a multi-billion-dollar book movie's history or industry around it. From the river to the sea. Solidarity, Alan. Okay. King Randor says, finally made one of your live streams watching from NZ. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks for joining
Thanks for joining. And Cornelius has noted there are awesome mountain bike tracks in Bright. That is part of the bucolic grandeur of Bright.
Just like there could be awesome, more awesome mountain bike trails in Canberra if certain governments...
if we built the ski lift from the bottom of Mount Stromlo to the top. Anyway.
If our local government actually valued mountain bikers rather than pushing them all out to New South Wales and Victoria. But yes. Cornelius knows all about that, and we don't.
All right, so
beer. Come on.
What do we think of this beer? It's a dark lager, which is a style I really appreciate because it's got a heavy malty backbone. It doesn't have too much hops. It doesn't have a lot of hops at all. I'm going to kind of come out here, Rob. I'm kind of a hop hater. Well, I don't love the hop dominant styles enormously. Sometimes they're great, but anyway, this one is a light-ish beer that's got a big, heavy, black look, and seems fine.
It might just be the heat, but it's a bit heavy for me on a day like today.
I mean, it's plenty cold. Your little cooling boxes worked, but
I think I might be biased just because I feel tricked, having not looked at it closely enough. When I was saying, well, the Japanese, the SU-76 fought the Japanese.
Alan said it looks like an Imperial Stout, and I would say there's way too much colour. I don't know if it's visible on the video, but there's a lot of light coming through it. It definitely has not been aged in oak for a year, which I believe is a requirement for the Imperial Stout style.
There were Imperial Stouts available, but I went for this one. So, as I was saying, I'm feeling a little, my ego is hurt because of my lack of awareness.
As I mentioned earlier, I have actually been to Russia. Well, I said I've been to China. I've been to Russia as well.
I've been to Bright.
We've both been to Bright. Excuse me. Russia, the great beers in Russia are mostly actually very red beers, and they come in nice big bottles. But I'm sure they make an okay number of lagers because the world wants lager. But anyway, as a dark lager, this bright Japanese style dark lager, premium dark lager at 5% ABV, it's fine, but there's not a lot special going on, I would say. I mean, I wouldn't say to anyone, order it specially in air freight. It's not that good, but if you see it on a shelf,
I also feel that the pricing of it for an Australian beer,
you feel it was priced like a Japanese beer.
I do, I do. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I'm going to look. I will drink it. I'll enjoy it, but I will feel in my ego, in my heart, that I was tricked. And I'm not feeling as good about it as I should. But anyway, by the end of this glass, I'll probably be feeling better about it anyway. Yeah,
it'll seem great. Okay, moving on from the beer. Bovington has just today dropped, so it's not in the slideshow for the people on the video feed, a very nice history of Australian armour and its use of armour, and it's well worth checking out. I don't imagine there's a lot of you who aren't already subscribed on YouTube to the Tank Museum. But if you're not, it's worth checking out. And it was left entirely to the younger dudes to make. I would say, it's like they're blowing some smoke up our ass, but it's nice to feel the smoke waft up there sometimes. And they're probably overly complimentary about Australia's very confused armour procurement in World War II. But that's a choice they've made for their own reasons. But in general, the fact they're saying, Australia has chosen quite distinctive and unusual ways to use armour in warfare to suit the conditions that we've had to fight in. I thought that point was well made. And it turns out you can use tanks in ways that don't meet other people's doctrines.
And the way they highlighted the fact of us using the M3 Stuarts and the Matildas rather than the Shermans.
Sherman,
It's well done. Well done.
All right, so moving further on, dandelion tanks are now a thing, which is in Ukraine. The Russians, who are getting better at beating off drones, have been taking aluminium cable and unwinding it, and this creates this dandelion-like effect around the tanks that if a drone hits it, it will stop on it, and that's creating meters of standoff for the shaped charge in the drone. So that's pretty clever. But yeah, anyway, there we are. Dandelion tanks.
There are images. I'm assuming we've got images of the.
Yeah, there are images in the feed, and obviously we will.
There it is.
Yeah, there for everyone on the video.
All right. So
yes.
Unlike Bloom County, it does not appear to be a dandelion field that Opus would like to sit upon.
This is a shame.
Yes.
I think that would be a better use of resources. But anyway.
So do I.
Rob, the first look at the M1A3.
It comes with cup holders and power points to charge your phone, plug in your laptop, and run a coffee machine. Right? These are the important points for those inside of it.
Now,
cup holders. Right?
I want to know. We are huge fans of Nicholas Moran, and we feel like we're personal friends from the. We spent about 3 days hanging out with him. He came to the pub with us, so I think that qualifies.
And we'd love to him to come to the pub with us again if we all end up at Oz Fest in 2026 at the end of August.
Yeah. But we was bad enough with this episode starting 15 minutes late because our monitors decided to die. He had something much, much worse happen where he knocked his camera over on its tripod, and
we surrendered, Nick.
Yeah, and then got home to find he'd shot the whole video talking about with the general about the M1E3, and it was all out of focus because he'd broken his camera, which A, the camera costs money, B, you've travelled, and he wore a suit specially for it. It was just like, it was my worst nightmare being unfolding in front of me watching this. But it's still a really great interview that people should watch, because if you want to know what America is doing with its next generation tank, it's the most insightful commentary on that you're going to get. I still feel like they're very close to trying to create the faster horses issue that Henry Ford. So Henry Ford, when he was designing the Model T, said, if I asked the customers what they wanted, they'd say faster horses, but I am going to create something completely different and new with the car. And they're still what they've produced with the M1E3 so far is not a prototype. It's a technology testbed. So where they're heading is putting all of the crew deep in the hull. And trying to, have the ammunition so it won't blow them up when it goes off.
A little bit like a T-14 Armata, John.
It was a lot like a T-14 Armata.
But does the T-14 Armata have cup holders, all right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, cup holders, it's important, all right? Crew comfort. PowerPoint's
cup holders are one of those things like, if I'm in a car with no cup holder, I just put the drink between my balls.
And if it's hot coffee and you stop suddenly, it goes badly, all right?
Yeah. I'm not sure the cup holders help enormously in every situation.
Well, anyway. Yeah. But the point being, go watch the interview. It's good, and we're looking forward to talking to the chieftain about it, other things, and all that sort of stuff. And having all his thoughts about it at some stage or another.
But you've still just got this issue going on that the US is not following the adaptation curve that's happening in the rest of the world right now. And look, Lord knows there's a lot of things going on in the US, and we've talked about some of it already. But it's like you've got to move faster, and they're moving very slowly at the moment, and I don't think that's going to be great for them in the long run.
Pete Hegseth, who's got this prototype out in the time frame he specified, John. But
no, it was late. It was meant to be out before Christmas, and it was out in January.
Oh, come on!
And it's not.
I think it was out before Christmas. It was just so the show wasn't on until afterwards.
My issue is more that what they have presented is not even close to being an actual prototype or a production vehicle. It is entirely, like they say, pay no attention to what's above the turret ring. It's like, well, what are we looking at then?
I'm not going to 6-7 this sort of stuff. But anyway, Greenland.
Sure.
Is that a non-event these days?
It was a big thing that happened.
Because remember, we've been looking at the last 6 weeks of news, and then suddenly 2 weeks ago, everything stopped, changed, different.
Well, I would say that with Greenland, Europe pushed back seriously on the US on this, and sure, everyone mocks it like, it was a tripwire force. It only had one Royal Marine captain in it. So the British contribution was one guy. But the point was that they actually said, no, we are really serious about this. This is going to be war. And Trump appears to have backed down on that. So we would have won the war anyway. But the bigger issue is that if Moscow was cooking up a cunning plan to destroy NATO, this is exactly what it would look like.
So do you think the Russian girlfriend of Trump and Melania's son, Barron, might have had some, I don't know how all this stuff, how there's somehow, do you think there are somehow links between the Trump administration?
I think if you're Trump's son and the hottest looking woman who's like, you're the most fascinating man I've ever met, happens to be Russian, I honestly think, young Barron Trump, he's a tall guy. He's not ugly. He should probably be able to, as the president's son, pull a pretty decent chick without needing to expand his field to Russian nationals.
Living in London.
Yeah.
Living in London, right? So, and doing it over FaceTime. So maybe just find your own.
Yeah.
But then again, at that age, he's probably doing. When we were that age, he was probably doing much better than we were.
Oh, son, when we were that age, and any chick who said, "I'd like to talk to you," we were like, "Well, I'd like to talk to you too." Okay, the Russian 4th Motor Rifle Brigade has been declared by Trenchard, which I think we need to get David Axe who runs Trenchard into the show. because he's actually got less people than we've got, even though he's doing so much better work than us. Anyway, the Russian 4th Motor Rifle Brigade has been declared as the best turtle tank makers. And it's interesting to think that in a war of adaptation, the innovation gets driven down to brigade level. It's not the national boffins saying, "Oh, this is what we need to do to survive."
It'll be the 50-year-old buddy crafty who's been around for so long. He knows how to do everything, and he's just the one guy saying, and everybody has respect for him, and they actually says, "Oh, you need to do this, then let's just buddy figure it out," and away he goes.
Anyway, I would say that a lot of armies are going to struggle with this kind of departure from doctrine, and the ones that don't are going to die in large numbers until they can learn the need to adapt at speed. Now, Rob, I'm going to hand this over to you because you care about this. But
look, the Australian military is paying for upgrades to Filipino military bases. Now, Australia doesn't have any special relationship with the Philippines.
We probably need to.
Yeah, but
look, I would say if there's the best war game that it was ever made was diplomacy. Which is
focused on Europe,
which is focused on Europe, but it's tremendously fun, and it's all about to actually achieve anything. You need to get someone else to assist your forces.
And so 7 players is what you need. Otherwise, it just gets boring.
You can do it with 4, but you need
7. I mean, to really
but there is a lesser-known version called colonial diplomacy, which is set in the Western Pacific.
Yeah, East Asia.
Well, I would say Western Pac because it absolutely drives home that Japan and the Philippines and Indonesia and Australia are incredibly important for the way the tactics unfold. Because if you can get the Japan, maybe the South Koreans, and the Philippines, Indonesia, and Australia all on the same side, you can absolutely dominate the Western Pacific and East Asia. And,
as long as you can get your orders right and they're actually legible.
Yeah, as long as everyone agrees with what they're actually doing, but group solidarity, Rob, that's the key to survival for any number of people who aren't major powers.
All right. So the point being is that Australia doesn't necessarily have any sort of special relationship with the Philippines, but we are paying for upgrades to Filipino military bases. And I'm guessing the infrastructure upgrades are for more air conditioning, for when they want to station Australian troops there to help deter China after the US implodes. Both the Australian and Filipino militaries are making noises about how they are worried about their relationships with the US. So it's a case of, okay, everybody's worried about what's happening. So let's make sure that we have...
Rob, you're stealing my lines. It's right there on the script. Okay, so everyone is...
Because you've never done that to me. You've never done that to me.
All right, let's have a fight instead of doing the podcast. Okay, everyone is worried about their relationship with the US, but East Asia has been getting really good at cooperative governance and standards in recent decades. We'll just cite as one example that we had GSM mobile phones in the middle of the 90s that just worked anywhere you went in the region. And this was at the same time when different cities in the US had incompatible networks. So your mobile phone in Philadelphia didn't work in Chicago. And at the same time, because Southeast Asia is really big on cooperation, your phone could go anywhere in the whole of the Western Pacific and just work. Rob's waving a white flag there, but anyway. The point is, cooperation and group solidarity is great. And there was a shameful moment that when I was working as a journalist in Parliament House, I was literally there for ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, came to induct Australia into it. And there was a moment there all the diplomats were lined up. The table had all the papers on it, and the ASEAN nation said, and of course you need to sign the non-aggression clause where we all agree we're not going to invade each other. And Australia said, "Oh, sorry, we're out." And it was within 6 months of the European Union coming out here with the trade deal for us and saying, "Oh, but you're also going to have to sign up to the European standards of human rights." And we were like, "Oh, we can't do that." So Australia does not have a great record on this either, but my point is just that you can join these bodies and you can get stuff done and you get richer and happier, instead we can go along with the US and everyone just sends their children to die every few years. Anyway, Rob. Oh, this is more me. As Mark Carney's speech pointed out at Davos, an opportunity exists for middle countries to cooperate for mutual benefit and leave the hegemons to destroy themselves. Rob, I'm going to let you take this one.
K3 tank looks lots of good-looking stuff as usual. If they can actually integrate the electronics, so the K3 is the Black Panther +1.
Yeah, the next big Korean tank. Remember, the South Koreans have got an enormous number of countries signing up to buy the K2 because it looks really good.
It does. It's a very. It's the most modern. I think it's the most modern tank out there in 2014, and it meets a lot of the requirements for Western countries. So whereas the US and Germany and so forth just upgrading the Leopard 2 and the Abrams, which are 1980s technology, the K2 is 2014 technology, and they're basically, so they've got a lot of the stuff already built in. Look, they're not looking to get the K3 out onto the road until 2040. But you can start now because the K2 is already out there. So
the K2 is testing a lot of technology. So one of the things they promised with the K3 is what I would view as a very worrying hydrogen fuel cell design. So
keep going.
I strongly suspect it's in there because Hyundai has made a bad bet on hydrogen infrastructure. The issue with hydrogen versus just filling up an electric battery is that you have to compress the hydrogen, which uses generating the hydrogen takes a lot of electricity. Compressing it takes an enormous amount of electricity. And then you have issues that transferring hydrogen from one tank to another has a lot of pressure and cooling issues.
But do you know how to do all that? You do it with the Australian liquid petroleum gas that we ship over there for free. Because Australia ships all our natural gas across to Japan and Korea for free, and they get to do what they like with it. We get no money from that.
Anyway,
all that money goes to Australia, Korea, and Japan.
I'm willing to bet a large amount of money for anyone who wants to take the bet that the K3, as it comes out, will actually be a battery, not a hydrogen fuel cell design.
I agree. But it's what they had, the technology they had right now. They're saying, look, this tank's going to come out in another 15 years. Therefore, we're going to say, look, we need to build it with the technology we've got and the power output that it's going to have right now. But when it actually comes out in 15 years, who knows? But it might have a small nuclear reactor.
Yeah, well, they're not.
Bolo.
Anyway, but let's give them credit. And all electric design with all rubber tracks does give us some great opportunities for stealth. And it aside from, I don't think the hydrogen power plant is going to work. I think the rest of it is looking like a really interesting tank. But there's a lot of real-world combat that's going to need to happen to figure out what we want a tank to be in the next 20 years.
Alan likes my idea with Bolo with cold fusion. Good on you, Alan.
So just quickly, the Russian tank reserve is gone.
T-62s are running out.
We talked about this 2 years ago. It took a little bit longer because this year they didn't use as much armor as they have in previous years. And a lot of young Russian men died as a result, and Uralvagon Zavod is still not producing anywhere near the number of tanks it should be for a country in a tank war. But the Russian armoured forces are larger now than they were before the war because they brought all the tanks to the storage. But they've gone from them being T-90s and T-72s down to them being T-62s and T-64s. So
I think they've gone through most of the T-64s.
Yeah,
they're harder.
They probably have, but it's not good. Anyway, Rob, this is one of yours.
All right, Australia is having no luck trying to build a strategic fleet. So Australia, being an island nation, has no boats. All right, when China or Japan or South Korea or even the US says, you know what, we need to be able to move some strategic resources from one place to another by boat. They can call upon a fleet and say, right, you are flagged in our country. We want you to, we're going to commandeer you and make you do this stuff. Australia has 12 ships. But
no, we don't. We had a plan to have 12 ships.
We have a plan to have 12 ships.
Yeah, for reference, I think it's 24,000 dockings per year in Australia to keep the country.
We use the fourth most ships in the world type thing. So China first, then probably Japan, and then Korea, and Japan, or the US, and then Australia, all right? Because we're an island nation. We use a lot of ships, but we would like to have 12. 12 that says, you know what, we belong to Australia. The Australian government can tell us what to do. But that was too hard.
And with Australian dudes on the ships, which is the problem because Australians are very expensive and everyone would rather use Filipinos.
Yeah. But getting 12 was not actually working. So who would have thought it? Getting rid of the maritime unions and their members and only hiring poor Filipino sailors means that no one wants to be part of the merchant marines in Australia anymore. And for a country that wants to be able to move its tanks overseas with the Aaron ships, it's really hard. Anyway, speaking of moving our tanks overseas.
Yes.
Oh, actually, this is the one moving the tanks around Australia. So we're also getting a bunch of new prime movers for the Army to move tanks around the country on the roads.
And I would say a prime mover that can move 80 tonnes is unusual because, as we keep saying, most transport infrastructure in the world tops out at 40 tonnes, which is why smarter countries than us have 40-ton tanks that can be carried by those things. But we've given Mac a lot of money, and we've got the biggest stuff that can actually move an 80-tonner across the 3 bridges in Australia that can actually carry an 80-ton load.
We only need, most of it's desert, so there's only 3 bridges actually to get across. So anyway, the best thing about getting 30 new trucks and trailers to move tanks, come on.
You drive it.
All right. Is that the Army is also getting the states to create set regulations as to how they can travel on the roads. It used to be that once you move from the Northern Territory to the Queensland, you could only drive certain hours and has to have different flags and markers and escort vehicles, and each state was different. Now they're actually saying if you want to drive from Queensland, where the tanks are actually located in Townsville, across the Northern Territory to WA, where the rare earth
Western Australia,
where the rare earth mines are, then you know from the start what you need to do to get there legally. So then say, look, we don't have to try and, once we get across the Queensland border, the Queensland police aren't going to stop our convoy and say, hang on, you guys aren't allowed to come across here unless you have these flags, this escort, and you're only allowed to drive until 6 o'clock at night. Going, well, now we can actually get across from where the tanks are to where they need to be a little bit easier. All right, now going back to tanks at sea. The Australian Abrams, the long march to Ukraine, 55 days at sea. It's probably pretty boring for the 5 crews that had to go with them, but at least...
Apparently it was the Ukrainian ship that had all these Ukrainians on board, and the lieutenant who was in charge of this...
It was a corporal. It wasn't even. It wasn't.
No, we had a lieutenant there as well. Anyway, they all had lovely chats with the Ukrainians about how great it was going to be for Ukraine to have 55 more.
I bet it wasn't a dry ship.
Probably not. No.
But look, 55 days for the to get 49 tanks across to Ukraine. At least there weren't any Fast and Furious heists to steal a bunch of tanks, which.
Awesome. That would have been great. Rob, can I have another beer while we're doing this, mate? There we go. All right, I'll help myself. All right. Here we go. Here's the can crack for the podcasters. Yeah.
All right. Canada enters the market for more armour to face the growing threat. That's you, America.
Yeah. So, Americans, think about this. You are the growing threat for Canada. And
the longest border, the longest
unsecured border.
Unsecured border.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now they're thinking about securing that thing.
So the Canadians are looking at basically IFVs, which is where all the smart money is going these days. I mean, obviously we will always have a soft spot for the gun tanks, but if you can carry...
Cooks and Clarks.
If you can carry 6 dismounts and a decent autocannon and some anti-tank missiles, then what do you need more for? So the mix at the moment that they're looking at is the Redback the Lynx, the CV90, which are all fantastic vehicles. I do love how the Australian...
None of them are American, John. Are you surprised by that?
Well, it's the same reason they're going to buy Saab instead of the F-35s. But yeah, and I don't know if you've seen the US has said, well, if Canada doesn't buy F-35s, we're going to invade their airspace. But you know, we're living in wild times. There's also upgrades to the Leopard 2 fleet planned on the way to a new tank force. And Rob, you'll be surprised, this will probably not involve the M1 Abrams.
Oh, there you go.
Canada doesn't want that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. We've reached the end.
How's our poll looking, John?
Oh, Rob, how is the poll looking?
21 votes. We are very useful. The SU-76 was a very useful and dangerous tank, 76%. A death trap, 24%. So...
You're both right. You're all winners. Yes. So... Holy crap, we're at the end.
With the time delay, it's not quite...
Yeah. Hans has suggested that what Canadian podcasts are offering signed white flags sounds like they need more, which is mean. Alan asked, does the beer have a widget in it? No, it did not. It was very disappointing.
For a hard-earned thirst.
No, he was talking about the Japanese dark lager.
Oh, no.
But, yeah. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for enduring through the technical difficulties with us. And, and I cannot express enough, it has been over 100 in American money, over 40 degrees in Australian, in metric. So freaking hot for so many days that normally this podcast down in the basement comes out. It's fine with it. It's been hot. It's really been hot. But we're through it now.
The cool change is coming tonight with thunderstorms and lightning.
We're going to get thunderstorms and lightning, and the power's going to be out. It's still going to be hot. We're going to lose the air conditioning. Anyway.
But look, I just want to say that the SU-76, it really is an unappreciated tank for what it did, for what it was, and for the support it provided. And it was a good thing overall. And I mean, the T-34 can't do everything, and it picked up the slack for everything else.
I think in terms of a multi-mission, very capable unit, and no one else in the world came up with something that they produced in the same numbers that did this. It really deserves more people to know more about it. Instead of being, look, I love being surprised. On an intellectual level, I just love learning new things.
When you find out something, I never knew about that.
I never knew about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you dig in, you dig in, you dig in.
Yeah.
And with that note, fight the fascists, and we'll see you next month.
Stay strong.